Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
It's wonderful to be here with you all once again for this meeting of Couples for Christ with these challenging topics that I'm always given, especially for a Christian and especially for as a priest, to talk about God's love and who is Jesus Christ. I would hope I would know those, so if I don't, we're all in trouble. But I do. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about this evening. So first of all, we're going to talk about God's love using St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, talking about what charity is as a virtue coming from God, what that means for creation, for redemption, and for our lives as Christians. Then we're all going to wake back up. Okay, we're all going to wake back up after that talk, and then we're going to talk about who is Jesus Christ, building on what we've talked about in creation, what we've talked about in redemption, and what that means for our lives, and specifically in this Easter season, talking about love and the gift of the resurrection. Okay? Does that sound okay? Too bad. Okay, that's what we're going to do. Okay? I am so very happy once again to be here with all of you. And as Edwin said, I am very supportive of the Filipino community. Because time and time again, as a witness in the church, I have seen how strong and powerful the Filipino community is in uniting with one another, building up the faith of the church, and especially handing on that faith to our children. So give yourselves a round of applause for being such a wonderful group of people. And thank you for all the adobo. Of course. But I will show you a still more excellent way. If I speak in human and angelic tongues, but do not have love, I am a resounding gong or a clashing cymbal. And if I have the gift of prophecy and comprehend all mysteries and knowledge, if I have all faith so as to move mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away everything I own, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain
Nothing.
That's right, you're getting it. Love is patient.
Love is kind.
Somebody, have you heard this reading before? Love is kind. It is not jealous. Love is not pompous. It's not inflated. It's not rude. It does not seek its own interest. It is not quick-tempered. It is not brood over injury. It does not rejoice over wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. It bears all things. It believes all things. It hopes all things. Endures all things. Love never fails. From the first letter of St. Paul to the church in Corinth, chapter 13, verse 1 through 8. St. Paul, in writing to the church, was speaking to a community that was broken and that was troubled and that was having a problem of unity and was facing trials in the world. Has anybody ever watched the news? I have. And when you look at the world, we experience the problem of evil every day. And we watch the news and we see strife, and we see hate, and we see evil, and we see war, and we see death. And sometimes we don't even have to turn on the TV to experience all of those things. And we look at the world and we say that there is serious disorder in the world. There's war, there's poverty, and there's murder. And even significantly, there is social injustice, where people, because of how they look, or where they come from, or what they say and how they speak, are discriminated against because of those things, unjustly. And perhaps we don't even have to turn on the news to have that experience. On a personal level, there is loneliness, depression, fear, insecurity, mistrust, Sometimes we don't even have to turn on Maury Povich or Jerry Springer to experience those things. We've seen that there's so many things in the world that we would call wrong or disordered. And nothing's new under the sun, is it? Here we are in 2012, in the 21st century, and these things exist and have existed from time immemorial. And so humanity has always said, when there's a problem, let's what? When there's a problem, let's fix it. Let's fix it. If something's broke, let's fix it. Let's find a solution. And so humanity, over and over through the centuries, has sought solutions to hate, to crime, to poverty, to war, to strife, to injustice. And so man has tried to improve the world in the field of medicine, in the field of food production, in the field of responding to all these needs. Humanity, time and time again, has said, I will use my ingenuity and the wisdom of humanity to respond to problems. Fine. Wonderful, right? And yet these things still exist. And we say, how can we respond? Humanity has said over and over again. But still the question remains for us, why? Why? Why do these things exist in the world? Why do they happen to the world? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do these things perhaps happen to me? We ask that question, why? And we believe, philosophically, that we come from somewhere. No matter if we speak a different language or we look different, we would say that we come from somewhere, not just from our parents, but we would say that our parents came from their parents came from their parents, and so on and so forth, that humanity comes from somewhere. And so perhaps we can talk about the beginning, and we can talk about creation. We can look at the universe and the world and say that somehow it all began, and so it started. And we would say that as the world was created, as humanity was created, so everything came to be, and somehow disorder entered into the world, and we would say, what has happened since? What has happened into the world? And if we take that ancient book, the very first book of the Bible, and we look at the book of that wonderful band also, Genesis. Anybody remember Genesis out there? Right. We would say that we look at the book of Genesis and we say, in the beginning, God created everything. And he saw that it was good. God created the world, and he created freely, and he, from the beginning, gave the invitation to humanity, to creation, to respond freely to the invitation, to receive, and likewise to give. God, in the beginning, gave the invitation to humanity and creation to give freely and to receive freely. God said, let there be light, and so there was. God said to humanity, love one another, be fruitful and multiply, and subdue the earth. And yet, we know from the rest of the story that that's not how things turned out. What happened in chapter 3 of the book of Genesis? Humanity was invited from the beginning to give freely and to receive freely. And what did humanity do? The book of Genesis tells us humanity simply took. Humanity, instead of giving freely and receiving freely, took. And so we have the story of Adam and Eve, who had the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and they were presented with another invitation: eat of this tree, and you will become gods. And God knows this. Eat of this tree, and you will become gods. But God already gave the invitation to humanity to freely receive and to freely give, and humanity's response was to take. And so humanity took, And in 2012, we recognize that humanity continues to take. Isn't that what war is about? Power, aggression, disagreement, strife, hate. Where is the giving and receiving? It's all about taking. It's all about taking. Discrimination, injustice, hate is all about taking. Disease, detriment, poverty, everything we experience physically is all about something being taken. And so takenness and humanity taken and the detriment and the poverty, not just of body but of spirit, entered into the world. And so here we are today in 2012 with the taking. But who is God? In this talk, we'd say God is love. And what does love do? Love freely gives and freely receives. God is love. And St. Paul wrote to this community all the way back from the very beginning of the church. And what came first? The church or the Bible? Pop quiz. What came first, the church or the Bible? Who says the Bible? Who says the church? Who says nothing at all?
No idea.
A lot of you, okay. The church, right? You can't have the Bible without the church talking to one another. The New Testament is all about the church being surrounded in love, talking to one another. So St. Paul wrote to the church in Corinth and said, you can have the greatest of knowledge. You can respond to every human ailment and every problem, and you can find every solution, and that's wonderful. You can even have, and this should sound radical to us in that chapter we read from St. Paul writing to the Corinthians, you can have, and Jesus said this, you can have faith so as to do what? Jesus said to you, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you would say to that tree, be uprooted, and it would be thrown into the sea. St. Paul said you can have faith so as to move mountains. Love. But if you don't have love, then you have nothing. And you are nothing. St. Paul says you can have the greatest of faith and know all things. You can have the solution to all problems. But if you have not love, then you are nothing. And you have nothing. Because from the beginning, God's plan was to freely give and to freely receive. And the plan was for humanity to become like God in all ways, most especially in the way of charity, love. Why? Because there are three theological virtues. Three theologicals, the virtues of faith, hope, and love. And St. Paul will go on to say the greatest of these is because it is God. Because this is who God is. But not only that, this is who you are. Humanity, creation, and the world. And so, as we say, bad things happen to good people in the taking. How often do we give freely and receive freely to know what God's plan is? In fact, God wants to bring us all back to Himself, to restore all of our fellowship, and most especially to restore our intimacy with Him. So, the serpent, as depicted in the book of Genesis, was correct. If you eat of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, you will become gods. And God knows this, and so you should have it. But didn't God say the same thing? Yes. God said the exact same thing, but He said, I want to freely give it to you. And I want you to freely receive. Because this is who you are, humanity and creation. And this is who Jesus would later on say in the Gospels, I am. Love. Freely given and freely receive.